The game is you versus Homer in the chance of evidence that is being updated in 2026, where I came into it until I saw them all. I think it's a little bit of a game on Roblox on it to save it that has nothing to do it with this over and over and over and over again. The one game is like if you know the game to the best way to it, you better give me a subscribe until I joined this game to go to the original updated you versus Homer game on it that has been long into it. But about these games, on to the only way to the greatest game in 2026. But instead I just tell you where it is for why I did that. I am perfect. People think I was cool in your pet cat named Kiplo. Given the prior knowledge and widespread awareness of potential future recurrences, it would behoove me to diligently maintain a persistent focus, reinforcing the instructive paradigm I previously imparted. Individuals habitually extend assistance in navigating and comprehending the fundamental principles inherent within established parameters, until such a juncture when I relinquish control, metaphorically casting away an orb skyward against a verdant expanse visible to facilitative entities, so that they might expedite progression. The sole purpose of my continued existence in this locale is to perpetually reiterate the notion that individuals would harbor a profound desire to emulate your conduct within the parameters of the nascent gaming experience. The predicament lies in the fact that I was purportedly privy to all auditory inputs, yet seemingly only apprehended fragments pertaining to the game. Prospective participants might demonstrate an inclination to scrutinize the entirety of its components. However, this time I am acutely aware of my domicile, contingent upon your visual confirmation of my presence. Reflecting upon my origins, perhaps it would behoove me to depart, having thoroughly examined the entirety of their digital representations, until such time as I vacated the stairwell, where I was reunited with my acquaintances. However, contrary to expectations, I possess a cherished koala companion named Krillin. Krillin enjoys a verdant arboreal domain, providing both sustenance through its foliage and opportunities for arboreal ascents, a reality rendered existential by Krillin's very actions in causing the flourishing of these trees and leaves destined for his consumption. Furthermore, Krillin possesses a noteworthy predilection for the confections known as donuts, often indulging at a specific restaurant, where he receives preferential treatment, ensuring his gustatory contentment, owing in part to certain actions I undertook to safeguard his experience. With the unparalleled grace of a koala, he desires to behold the esteemed Hatsune Miku in a live concert performance in Japan. Subsequent to these Japanese concerts and propelled to unprecedented heights of anticipation, I discerned that Miku harbors an earnest desire to meet my friend and cherished pet, Krillin. Considering the plethora of frivolous amusements currently available, I resolved to ascertain the veracity of the intimation that a malevolent entity, colloquially referred to as Homer, is imminent, with intentions to sexually assault equins within the confines of the garden. A sensation of lubriciousness pervades my visage, yet I remain determined to evade apprehension by said Homer, who seeks to ensnare us all in his nefarious designs. I harbored a slight appetite for pizza, which had been consumed for several days consecutively, while Krillin observed Miku during their sojourn in Japan. I entrusted my cherished pet to the care of individuals in Japan. I had been preserving my pet with the intention of seizing it and hastily departing from Japan, seeking refuge beneath my residence, and returning home to indulge in Miku's musical compositions. Krillin conveyed to me that Miku expressed a desire to see us. Subsequently, upon Miku's ingress into my abode, she inquired, "Criminy, might I have the privilege of beholding your esteemed pet?" To which I responded, "Indeed, I aspire to escort you to my domicile. However, observe my pet, Krillin, a charming koala of the masculine gender." She then affirmed, "Very well, I am desirous of beholding your pet." Krillin predicated his being a koala, possessing charm, and being of the male gender. I obliged, stating, "Behold, Miku, here he is." She responded with, "Acknowledged, that is quite satisfactory. However, you may retain possession thereof." I expressed my gratitude, saying, "Very well, I appreciate gratitude, Miku." Miku then directed her gaze toward the television, beholding the ornament reflected therein. Upon witnessing the spectacle of Miku on television, a profound affection took root within me, subsequently leading to an encounter with Miku alongside my cherished pet. I beseeched her to remain in my company within the confines of the front room. However, Miku initiated a transformative journey toward Japan, ultimately ascending to the apex of a towering urban edifice. Subsequently, she imparted the sagacious wisdom to cradle my animal companion tenderly in my grasp, and inquired in a tone laced with concern, "Are you feeling more composed, Criminy?" To which I responded with affirmative conviction, "Indeed, such an affirmation signifies our capacity to attend the forthcoming concert, thereby underscoring the imperative need to express our longing and admiration toward you. Your sole recourse lies in gracing the concert with your presence, a gesture that I remain steadfast in my conviction will effectuate your felicitous return to my side." My progeny, Sophia, observes the animated entity, Miku, broadcasted on terrestrial television within the United Kingdom, yet she harbors a profound affection for Miku. The solitary companion I possessed was the venerable Felix McConnell. Felix and I would observe Miku's televised appearances whilst imbibing alcoholic beverages, particularly as I had recklessly disregarded the anticipations incumbent upon my professional endeavors. I was disseminating the fundamental pecuniary assets derived from my Roblox holdings in Japan, but he withheld the current valuation of my Roblox assets, consequently bereaving me of Roblox within the Roblox platform during my sojourn in the United Kingdom. The central predicament resides in the imperative of preserving the entirety of the aforementioned content prior to the temporal juncture at which prohibitive restrictions become operative. thereby impeding its dissemination. However, my endeavors to locate said content have proven unsuccessful, and I possess a degree of uncertainty as to whether Kevin possesses the requisite willingness to undertake the task within this specific locale, precipitating the question of my hypothetical metamorphic transformation, potentially into an auditory signaling device. Ergo, I implore you to exercise greater prudence in future interlocutions. I extend my gratitude, albeit with reservation. This current situation deviates substantively from the articulated rationale I espoused in prior times. Devoid of external dependencies, I would be amenable to executing the task. I posit that I possess what appears to be circumstantial substantiation. However, I was cognizant from the moment of my ingress that the intended purpose was to hurl the explosive projectile at the aforementioned juveniles located within the Mexican Republic. Nevertheless, I am fundamentally disinclined to engage in actions that exploit individuals who relinquish their corporeal existence. Indeed, I am averse to such conduct. In the recent past, I briefly deviated from this principle. I delivered a forceful percussive impact upon the portal, thereby causing a fracture, demonstrating my superior manual strength. I was incapable of ascertaining the underlying rationale for the presence of numerous pedal impressions, akin to a earthen creature traversing the aqueous expanse. The aforementioned impressions were discovered upon the terrestrial surface, situated distantly from the arboreal specimens, wherein coconuts are typically observed. I surmised that my temporal allocation should be directed toward the ascertainment of the whereabouts of the simian creatures, specifically the one who has a proclivity for inflicting forceful blows upon my testicles. I labored under the misapprehension that I was a transgressor of the law until my subsequent return. I surmised my existence was that of a malodorous and isolated young man, quite likely during the nocturnal hours upon my return to my domicile. Miku and Krillin were perpetually engrossed in Comedy Central's Reno 911 program, a spectacle also enjoyed by my companions and domesticated animals, until I absconded with my pet to the confines of my boudoir, where I commenced wallowing in sorrowful contemplation of my visage. I anticipated the arrival of Miku. However, Kevin presented himself instead. Kevin informed me that I appeared despondent, but Miku instructed Kevin to depart for scholastic pursuits. Miku did indeed articulate this pronouncement during our dialogue. It is plausible that I addressed Miku in a somewhat frantic manner, as our interaction possessed a facetious element. Consequently, I would inquire of her, "Very well, Miku, are you presently prepared?" She responded with laughter, exclaiming, "Absolutely not, my acquaintance. It merely signifies my obligation to vocalize a song. You appear to be wholly unaware of my present activities. L-M-A-O, farewell." Ha ha! Subsequently, she departed my vicinity outdoors for the purpose of performing vocally at the concert. Although this was our initial encounter, I must concede that I find myself contemplating whether said concert is, at this very moment, in progress. Kevin and I engaged in recreational activities, specifically Roblox and the consumption of cannabis. Regrettably, we found ourselves entering zombies within the confines of the graveyard through some manner. Good heavens! Krillin, the sovereign of the koalas, possessed an appearance of extreme homeliness, resembling a gorilla in his visage. He proclaimed, "Guards, escort them hence." Kevin and I were incarcerated by these sentinels, who deposited us within the jail. Presently, Krillin extends to us a pair of gifts. Alas, the vermin doth approach. Whenever we achieved emancipation, we would excavate ourselves from the earth utilizing a spade and proceed towards the ocean, anticipating the arrival of a vessel. They rescued us all without the aid of the ocean. They returned. Kevin and I engaged in recreational activities, specifically Roblox and the consumption of cannabis. Regrettably, we found ourselves entering zombies within the confines of the graveyard through some manner. Good heavens! Krillin, the sovereign of the koalas, possessed an appearance of extreme homeliness, resembling a gorilla in his visage. He proclaimed, "Guards, escort them hence." Kevin and I were incarcerated by these sentinels, who deposited us within the jail. Presently, Krillin extends to us a pair of gifts. Alas, the vermin doth approach. Whenever we achieved emancipation, we would excavate ourselves from the earth utilizing a spade and proceed towards the ocean, anticipating the arrival of a vessel. They rescued us all without the aid of the ocean. They returned. Upon my arrival, Kevin and I were indulging in popcorn while engrossed in the cinematic experience of First Blood from 1982. Ordinarily, our viewing time would be constrained to a mere 10 hours. Yet we would engage in combat with those nefarious criminals within the Mexican jungle, employing an elephant to trample our adversaries, and utilizing our armament to subdue them through gunfire. The stark reality of the circumstances proved to be quite disconcerting, as our modus operandi involved launching explosive devices at the malevolent entities and dispatching them under the cloak of night. Conversely, we were inclined to journey to the United Kingdom. During our time spent domestically, Kevin and I immersed ourselves in the televised adventures of Miku, a practice observed until the unfortunate departure of my cherished animal companion. However, fortune smiled upon us with the return of Krillin to his homeland, where he reigns as the sovereign among koalas. Nevertheless, an irrepressible desire compelled me to seek out Miku, eager to witness her felicitous return. Upon reuniting, I embraced her affectionately, assuaging any prior concerns. Krillin, by all accounts, appeared to be flourishing. It is conceivable that a mutual affection exists between Miku and myself. Kevin and I, with fond recollection of Miku, hold her dear in our memories. As such, my affection extends to Kirby, a sentiment predicated upon the recognition and remembrance of both Kirby and Miku. a dual affection intertwined with acknowledgement and understanding. And, reflecting upon my actions, I consider myself to have behaved admirably. Consequently, recollections of contentment flood my consciousness, specifically those from my sojourn to a Japanese arcade, a venue where Kevin and I engaged in terpsichorean activities reminiscent of Miku's vocal performances. The remembrance of Miku is vivid, having witnessed their entire ensemble, and I confess, a sense of well-being pervaded me in their presence, further amplified by the anticipation of beholding Kirby. Life, as I perceive it, finds its zenith in the admiration of both Kirby and Miku, an appreciation extended to their collective endeavors. Subsequent to my return and re-engagement with the aforementioned duo, my purpose centered around discerning Miku's forthcoming actions, a period of personal contentment stemming from the aforementioned journey to Japan during our shared existence. I vividly recall my daughter, Sophia, engrossed in her mobile device, despite her scheduled attendance at school. Indeed, she exhibited lassitude and fatigue, appearing quite aged. Kevin and I are cognizant of the fact that my daughter possesses numerous advantages and opportunities. Nevertheless, my affection for Miku remains genuine and profound. Kevin and I would be prepared to meet our demise. Kevin and I arrived here solely with the intention of securing employment at McDonald's. However, my superior was present, and he threatened to terminate my employment. A customer was also present, and I recall the presence of my phone, although I was unable to access it due to my involvement at the Mexican restaurant. I had already suffered burns from the grill, which was effectively melting my epidermis, while I was subjected to worldly experiences. I was situated within the confines of a medical facility during that period. I sacrificed my personal well-being entirely, as I was inclined to do, until such time as my physical appearance resembled that of a earthen creature. However, my esteemed companion Kevin had already taken residence within the confines of this very medical institution prior to the aforementioned incident. That is until he propelled me off hospital's premises, while simultaneously Kevin was making a rapid egress, fleeing the pursuit of a rather irate nurse. Undeterred, he persisted in his accelerated escape from the nurse, hurtling toward the precipice of the cascading waterfall. Alas, both Kevin and I were inadvertently swept over the waterfall's edge, resulting in what I can only describe as a near-death experience for myself, an event marked by shared tears and lamentations. Subsequently, it was discovered that we were in a lifeless state within the waterfall's plunge pool. They recovered us, confirming our deceased status. The fact remains that Kevin had absconded from the hospital's jurisdiction. In a moment of fraternal urgency, Kevin clasped me, securing me on his back, while the furious nurse relentlessly pursued us toward the looming bridge. A formidable crocodile then intruded, adding another layer of panic as we desperately eluded both the nurse and the reptilian threat. The crocodile, alas, managed to inflict a bite upon one of us, but miraculously, we were spared from further harm in the nick of time. Subsequent, we found ourselves plunging into a pool of molten lava, resulting in our demise, which was now an inescapable fate. Yet, inexplicably, they located us even within the molten depths. Definitively, they had denied my request to depart the hospital grounds. We will perpetually be required to remain within this medical establishment, forced to be fed meatballs into our mouths. Therefore, it is my informed opinion that the aforementioned narrative has reached its conclusion within the confines of our visual recording. However, the present video shall persist until I devise a suitable method of termination, facilitated by its dissemination on the YouTube platform. I formerly engaged in the interactive virtual environment of Roblox, specifically a player versus Homer simulation. I implore you to bestow upon me a subscription, as I am currently devoid of the virtual currency known as Robu. Indeed, perhaps my demise would have been a more fitting outcome, and in truth, it ought to have been my fate all along. I have already produced an extensive video, a veritable magnum opus, intended to serve as a final expression, much like the one I crafted to encapsulate my innermost feelings. I undertook this with the express purpose of demonstrating my unwavering presence and support for you during challenging circumstances. As a veracious matter of indubitable fact, I, for one, find it inescapably incumbent upon myself to bring closure to this visual recording. Thus, we have progressed to the juncture where it becomes exigent to terminate the video presentation on the YouTube platform. Candidly, I harbor a modicum of apprehension regarding those individuals who venture into my video, a space wherein I have articulated my contemplations. I elected to capture a rather explicit video utilizing my recently acquired device. In retrospect, I realize how utterly fatuous I was to prematurely terminate the recording. Subsequently, I was perusing the Roblox platform in search of engaging games, and during that time, I assessed that I presented myself as exceptionally alluring. Given my perspectives, I would be decidedly unable to emulate such behavior if I were in your position. Indeed, as an irrefutable matter of fact, I would be compelled to bring this particular video endeavor to a definitive and conclusive cessation. I must confess, at this juncture, I find myself incapable of proceeding. I vehemently deny any insinuation of being intellectually deficient or aesthetically unpleasing. However, the present task is simply beyond my capacity for completion. This represents the culmination of my tolerance, the final imposition I am willing to endure. My only recourse is to preemptively conclude this audio-visual recording, thereby averting an undesired and disadvantageous outcome that I perceive as imminent. Thus concludes the narrative arc. As for my personal circumstances, I believed my involvement was solely confined to military engagements within Mexican territory. Yet, once more, my presence graces this location, motivated entirely by my dedication to you. It is incumbent upon me to execute all actions within the purview of my capabilities. Furthermore, I was physically present at this location until such a juncture as I deem it appropriate to terminate this visual recording, at which point the aforementioned recording will abruptly conclude. I extend my profoundest disdain to my acquaintances. Farewell, until our next encounter.